Now I'd like to talk to you about the Deco Brush. The Deco Brush is new in ZBrush 2020, but it's based on a brush that's been inside of ZBrush since the beginning. It was one of the original 2.5D brushes. If we go into the tool menu here and come down here to 2.5D, you'll find the Deco Brush. This is the original Deco Brush. We don't use this one anymore. But what the Deco Brush did was create this really nice sort of cursive or calligraphy type stroke. So what has been created now, if we go to B for brush, D for deco, we have the Deco Curve Dot and Deco Curve Drag brushes. Now these are really nice for creating really interesting types of shapes. So what I'll do is I'll select the Deco Curve Drag, and here you see we've got an alpha with an arrow and a drag dot stroke. So if we draw on the surface of the model, we create this curve. Now, of course, we can do the same changes as usual by clicking on the curve and adjusting it. And when we do, we see that that stroke appears and we can move that stroke around the surface. And if we zoom in, you can see that that stroke is essentially that arrow alpha stretched all along the length of that curve. If I come over here, extend this curve, and then drag, we can actually extend that stroke. So let's take a look at this in action with a different alpha. What I like to do is customize this brush. Let me undo back to the beginning. I'll go to the Dam Standard brush, and I quite like the alpha for this brush, so I'll go to Alpha, Transfer, and I'm just going to click Make Modified Alpha, and that will just make that alpha available to me in the brush, in the alpha palette. Now we'll go back to the Deco Curve Drag brush, and oops, B for brush, D for deco, Deco Curve Drag, and we'll change that alpha to the alpha that we just extracted from the Dam Standard brush. Now I'm going to turn on RGB and turn off Z Add, and I'm going to select a color here. So let's use this to create some color variation on the surface, some kind of tribal markings or tattoos. So I'm going to create some curves here. And then if I click and drag, you see the effect that we get. We get this really nice calligraphy stroke that follows that curve. Let's do another one here. Let's create some nice sort of streak markings here. Let's turn our draw size down. Do another kind of zigzag here. And then pull that curve. You can see the effect that we get. These types of strokes are otherwise hard to get, actually, and I really enjoy sort of the process of making these. I like the effect that they have. Like that's really quite a nice stroke there. Let's undo that and do it again. I'm just going to click and drag that, and there we go. We get this really nice kind of elegant line. Now I can drag this all over the surface and determine where I actually want to drop this stroke, which is another quite interesting thing, is this stroke travels along the surface until I exit my curve. Once you drop the curve, it's gone. You can't pick it up again. You have to draw a new curve. So let's draw another one through here, and let's do some markings down here on the chin. There we go. There we go. So you see how very easy it is to build up these very unique strokes on the surface. Now if I go back to B for brush, D for deco, we also have Deco Curve Dot. So let's change that to the same brush alpha and go to RGB. And you can see the effect that this has. This one doesn't drag along the surface, it continues the stroke. So I'm not migrating my stroke so much as, whoops, let's undo that and let's go to the neck here where it's easier to see. So if I drag this here, there you go. You see that it leaves the stroke behind and continues it rather than sort of migrating the stroke along the surface. Whereas the drag curve dot allows me to do this and move that stroke until I let go of the brush. Let's turn our draw size up, and we'll create some strokes here. Come around to the back, turn our draw size up again, and create some interesting strokes here. Now we can change our alpha to anything that we want. Just some alphas lend themselves better than others to being dragged along that stroke. Typically it's the fine point alphas and the directional alphas. I find the arrow to be quite obviously an arrow. So I typically don't use that one, but you get the idea. If you create a directional alpha, you can get some real interesting effects with this. Now we can use it for more than just painting. We can use this also for sculpting. So if I switch over to this shirt, I find this to be a really good brush in its default settings. So let's go ahead and reset current brush. Let's change to brush alpha 1. And we're on Z add. So I'll change it to Z sub. And let's say we want to create some compression folds here. So what I'll do is let's turn off let's turn off X symmetry. So I'll create these sort of characteristic zigzag folds that you get where fabric sort of bunches up. And we drag, we get this really nice effect here. Let's drag another one right next to it. And I'll hold down the Alt key and that will raise that. So this is just really perfectly designed for creating folds and wrinkles. Let's turn our draw size down. And let's draw another one just along here. Hold down the Alt key so it raises. So you see that's the effect that we get. If we change our alpha maybe to alpha 1, and then let's do another zigzag here, you see we get a different effect. I'm going to turn down my draw size and then drag this again. There you go. And then let's drag next to it. I'll draw a new stroke running along the top, because whenever I'm sculpting drapery, let's undo that and hold down the Alt key so it adds. I always try and do a positive stroke for every negative stroke. So do an add for every subtract and vice versa. So there we go. If you just, let's go back to the Deco curve drag, and I just tap over here, anywhere on the model, it gets rid of those curves. And then I can maybe step down subdivision levels, do a little bit of smoothing on this, but it's just a really nice way of building up the compression wrinkles, those characteristic folds that we get in fabric. So I'll come in with the standard brush here and just continue to nuance that. There you go. So I think probably my favorite thing to do with this brush is to use it on fabric and drapery, because it just creates the perfect sort of gathered folds. So that is the Deco brush. The Deco brush can be used in painting, it can be used in sculpting, and it's quite a bit of fun. And if you haven't used the Deco brush before in its previous incarnations, I encourage you to give it a try, because it creates these really, really interesting shapes that I think you'll really enjoy exploring. And again, just because I was using it on fabric doesn't mean that we can't go in here and use it as a sculpting tool for wrinkles on skin. So here we go on Z sub. If we were to create let's do a little wrinkle right here on the forehead, and then click and drag, and see we can very, very easily build up. That's a bit too deep, so I'm going to turn my Z intensity down on that. We can very easily start to build up like forehead wrinkles and different forms like that. That's quite nice. Let's turn up our Z intensity a little bit more. There you go. So you can see it's a really nice way of building up folds and wrinkles either in skin or in fabric. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.